Good morning, everyone. Jim Clarke here at the Synchronicity Sanctuary in Central Virginia to share another contemplative focus with you. And the focus I want to share with you today is simply this: creation is a miraculous process of life. Consider your life as a miracle. Add to this that creation is not different from the Creator. Open up to your essential nature, to the self that lives within you, and then you may fully live the miracle that you are. This is a process and a focus that I have experienced here at the sanctuary over many, many years, and it's a statement that reflects the consensus opinion from many thousands of years of wisdom traditions of meditators and different systems and what they have discovered in their journey. So it's not something that was just dreamed up. It's something that's been validated by thousands of human beings meditating all over this planet. And as such, it's something that's worthy of your consideration. You have to consider how you showed up in this world to begin with. We show up suddenly, we don't know who we are, we don't know where we are, we know nothing about the world that we're experiencing, and yet here we are. So where did we come from? Where were we before we showed up in this world? We had to come from somewhere or something, at least we think so. And that's a mystery that usually gets lost in the enculturation process as we grow and begin to go to school and we identify with a name, our parents, our peers, and we get so caught up in life, in the process of belonging in life, where we are seemingly separate from everybody else, that the internal world that we have, the subjective world that we experience, gets lost in the frenzy of trying to belong and live a life strictly from the outside. Everything we have acquired in this process comes from the outside. This doesn't come from the inside. Our parents gave us information, our schools gave us information, our peers gave us information, and we accept some, we reject others, and on and on and on. And as we grow and become able to express ourselves with the language that we learn, and with all that we've developed through our five senses and our minds, we continue to play a role that we were given, but not one that we can discover, one that existed prior to all of this process. So where was that? And the only way to do that, of course, is to take your focus away from the external world, from the objective world outside, seemingly outside of yourself, and then to begin to meditate, which is simply taking your focus and your attention and putting it in duration to the inside of yourself, to the subjective world that you experience. And in that process, you begin to discover that there's so much more inside you than you ever thought. I won't go into any details here, but it's like when the telescope was invented and suddenly the universe opened up and we got more and more detail and understanding about the world outside of us, in addition to our own planet. When you go inside and you meditate, you begin to discover that there's much more to you there as well. And as that process unfolds, if you maintain your practice, if you meditate and pretty much devote yourself to that process of discovering who you are beyond what you have identified with, something more fundamental, something that was with you when you were born and will be with you when you're through with this life. That's really the object of meditation, is discovery. And as you do this, if you do this, then things open up. Different forms and different kinds of intelligence become into your awareness, and your awareness expands, and the new information, which goes way beyond the mind, comes into your awareness. And as that unfolds, you begin to see just how much of a miracle you really are and how much of a miracle all life is. So many billions of human beings, so much life, animals, insects, humans, plants, and it's all unfolding in a way that no one could possibly orchestrate as a human being, and yet it's happening. It's happening every moment of our lives, including our life. Our life is unfolding without us having to do much of anything other than eating and drinking and breathing. And we don't have to regulate anything. It's all being done. So how did that happen? And what's the intelligence behind that? So it's really a process of investigation and putting aside your assumptions and your attachments to beliefs that you have acquired from outside sources, and just allowing yourself to be open to what is, and to see what comes into your awareness and what you can validate from your own experience. This is the biggest difference between systems of meditation, what we call wisdom traditions, and that of traditional systems of learning like our schools and so forth, where we're trusting that the information we read and hear is true, as opposed to having a direct experience of something where you know from that experience that it's real because it's real for you anyway, And when you have a direct experience of something, you gain a knowledge about that thing or that process or that act that no one can have without going through the same process. If you're a professional builder, let's say, what you learn in your life as a builder cannot be gotten out of a book. You can read about it, but it doesn't automatically translate into kind of like a wisdom in terms of the knowledge of how to actualize building something, because that requires a skill that can only be gotten through experience. And experience is a validation process that is so powerful that once you meditate and open up to who you are and start to explore, those experiences will bring you into a world that is so vast and so powerful that you'll wonder why you didn't do it before. In my experience here, when I first came here to this sanctuary, I had already been meditating for some time, and I'd already had some very strong and powerful, what we call spiritual experiences, but I call them human experiences because that's being a human is what allowed me and you and anybody else to have such experiences. But when so many people from the distant past who were meditating and following similar approach to life and discovering life in this way came up with the same conclusions over and over again over thousands and thousands of years, one cannot help but consider that this is a fundamental truth of life, that it is a mystery, it is a miracle. It's not something that we can write down in a book. It's not something we can understand from the mind. It's something that can only be comprehended through the direct experience of it. And that experience is generated when you go beyond your mind. And that is fundamentally what meditation is. As my teacher said many, many times, meditation begins where the mind ends. Once you quiet yourself, once you create enough balance, first in the physical body so that the body isn't making a lot of noise and distracting you, and then in your emotions, where your emotions can be positive and empowering and allow you to be at peace with yourself on that level, and then your mind, your thoughts, same process there. You focus on a positive thought process, or you consider entertaining a focus like this, kind of like a mantra, only it's like if you say creation is a miraculous process of life, or there is only one source consciousness, all is this source consciousness, I am source consciousness, that kind of thinking, that thought process, if you maintain a focus on that, then you start to open up to that, just like you open up to whatever you focus upon. And as you go through this process, you generate the experiences that are that relate to that focus. And that is, it's really that simple, but it's not something you do that often because I mean, a lot of people don't do it because they're just not ready for that. They haven't evolved themselves to the point where they're ready to take on the exploration of the truth of who they are because they're still gaining experiences about who they are not. This is a fundamental process that is recognized in my teaching of the process of human evolution, the spiritual evolution that is actually happening in this world, which is what it's all about. It's not about what we call important outside of ourselves, our jobs, our careers, our relationships, and all that. It really goes all the way back to your birth, where you popped into this world suddenly and knew nothing. And yet, all the information you gain from the outside of yourself never fulfill you. They never seem to put you at rest, at ease, and to maintain a kind of level of wholeness within yourself. They always, the more information you gather from outside yourself, the more questions you have. And it just generates more and more uncertainty, you might say. Because for consciousness to take on a form and to identify itself with a form, of course, there is a fundamental conflict here because consciousness is much, much more than just a form. It creates form, so it can't just be a form, it has to be the creator of the form as well. And so this fundamental conflict that just comes with form, especially in a human form, is with us at birth. We don't know it, we don't experience it then, we're too busy just trying to survive, but as we grow and become more educated in terms of being able to express ourselves, that conflict, if it is not addressed, any conflict that's not addressed will eventually surface and we'll have to deal with it one way or the other. So in the meditation process, in the process of taking a life affirmative focus such as this one, and then using that to open a door up within yourself to see what your experience of that statement is a process that the mind can't go into. The mind can never answer that question. And the whole process of meditation quiets the mind, quiets the emotions in the body, and then when you develop that stillness, at that point, then the possibility of having a direct experience of what you're focusing upon can happen. And with practice, this does happen. It's just something that comes spontaneously. But in the beginning, of course, it's a product of you doing what you have to do to bring yourself into enough balance to be able to sustain such an experience, because they're very powerful experiences. And if you don't have the balance, if your mind is never stopping, if your emotions are all over the place, if your perception and experience of the world is very, very negative and stressful, then you will never have the opportunity to consciously generate the experience of knowing who you are is highly unlikely. So, in my experience here and in my life, my journey began many, many, many years ago, before I even came here. But when I came here, I put myself in an environment that supported this kind of a lifestyle, where meditation happened every day. I didn't have to make time for it. It was built into my schedule every day. And I was given many contemplations, such as this one, to utilize in addition to the actual physical act of meditation, where you sit and you begin to breathe and be conscious about your breath, and then you do everything you can to bring stillness into you, and then you look at what your experience is, and you'll either find that there's something you have to address in order to get enough stillness to actually have a holistic experience of life, a direct experience of the truth of who you are. And then this process goes on until you have developed that balance. And once you develop that balance, then you start to get the experiences of it. You get visions, you get all kinds of very expansive experiences that are demonstrations of the fact that you are much, much more than a human being. You're much, much more. And life is much, much more than you ever thought it could be. And you simply couldn't comprehend it because you were limited by trying to figure everything out through a mind, which is so prevalent in today's world. We've developed a highly technical world, and now the mind is supreme, and people develop it in order to just survive much more than they had to do, say, several thousand years ago. And so it's a focus that people grow up with to the point where it's difficult for them to quiet the mind and to set it aside and to allow themselves experiences that they can have that goes beyond the mind, such as meditation. So it's the focus that I've used many, many times and still continue to use to this day, and I still get the results from it. So that's the focus that I wanted to share with you today. Going in instead of out every day, do a formal meditation in duration. Allow yourself to quiet yourself down and discover what is beyond anything that the mind could ever comprehend. So that's it for today. I hope it's of some use to you, and I will be back next Monday morning to share another contemplative focus with you. Thank you for watching.